Hey folks, so this is section 3.3. We're going to move through some of these examples pretty quickly since all of these came from both Math 101 and Math 102. So this is just a review for you. First of all, solving the quadratic equation by using the zero product property. So you'll notice down here in example 1 that I have a quadratic equation and I want to solve by using the zero product property or factoring. First thing, you do have to have 0 on one side. I do have that, so I'm okay as far as that's concerned. I notice that I have a GCF, so the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out the GCF. A second thing that I notice is that the trinomial inside the quantity can also be factored. Remember, this is your unfoiling. So I'm leaving the 2 alone, and then I'm factoring or unfoiling the trinomial that's on the inside. Once I'm able to do that, then I can take each of my 3 pieces. So I have this piece right here, this piece right here, and this piece right here. I can set all 3 pieces equal to 0. So the first one says 2 equals 0, and honestly, this should make me question because 2 is never going to equal 0. So this part of this, I need to throw this out. This is not going to be part of my solutions because solutions require x's and I don't have any x's here. The second one, if I set my x plus 4 equal to 0 and solve that one, it will be equal to, I'm sure you can guess that. And then the third one is x minus 2. Let's set that one equal to 0. I have too many equations that I can solve. I solved them both at the same time to get either x equals negative 4 or x equals positive 2. Then if you jump down to my square root property example, so one way that I can solve quadratics is by the factoring method. Second way is by the square root method. Notice that the whole goal in this equation is to get x by itself. So I want to start stripping away the layers that are around the x. The first thing I need to get rid of is my 2. So I'm going to divide on both sides by 2. Clean that up. And I uncovered just a bit too much on that. And so I'll have x minus 1 quantity squared is equal to 7. The next thing I want to do is get rid of the square. And the only way I can get rid of a square is by taking the square root of both sides. Don't forget, when you take the square root of both sides, you have to remember that there's a positive or a negative. The left side is just simply going to become x minus 1. The right side is still that plus or minus square root of 7. Go ahead, the goal was to get x by itself, so add 1 to both sides, and you'll have x is equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of 7. Next is the completing the square example. We've already completed the square to turn the standard form into the vertex form in one of your videos from a previous section, from section 3.2. This is to solve. So I actually want to find out what x equals. So the first thing I'm going to do, following my list, and by the way, this is the exact same list that we used earlier. Part 1 says to get rid of the a, and I don't have an a, so I can go ahead and go straight into number 2. Move the constant down the line and ignore it temporarily. And that's what you see I've done here. No math involved. 3, take half of your b term. So my b term is a negative 4x. I want to take half of that, so that's going to be a negative 2. And then it says that I should square that number. So if you take negative 2 and square it, you're going to end up with a positive 4. The next step, number 5, says that I should add it and subtract it. So that's what goes in the blank, that 4 that I found in step number 4. Number 6 says that I should factor the trinomial. This is where I take those 3 pieces, and remember that I have a shortcut for that. So factor the trinomial, you have an x minus 2 quantity squared. And then number 7 says to combine the leftover constants. So your negative 4 and your positive 2 is what gave me the negative 2 down below that. Now I'm actually ready to start solving. This is going straight back to the square root property method. So I just simply need to start stripping away all of the things around the x. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 2 over to the other side. by adding it to both sides. Once I have done that, then I want to square root both sides. Don't forget your plus minus. This is going to give me a plain x minus 2 on the left. And then the last thing that you want to do is add 2 to both sides, so that you'll have 2 plus or minus the square root of 2. Then if you'll jump all the way down, please, to our quadratic formula, I'll do one example here. This is example number 10. So you're going to need to follow the quadratic formula to be able to solve using the quadratic formula. So the first thing I'm going to do is figure out what my a, my b, and my c are in that quadratic formula. So if you go back, I need a's, b's, and c's. My a is 9. My b is positive 12. My c is positive 4. And so that's what I'm going to be plugging in when I use a's, b's, and c's. And so we know that our formula says x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So I'm just following my formula. You should be familiar with this. This is Math 101 and Math 102. Now I need to clean it up. So I'm going to clean up what's on the inside of my square root, which is just 0. The square root of 0 is 0. So that's going to leave me with just a negative 12 over 18. Of course, I'm not going to leave it like that. I am going to reduce my fraction so that I have a negative 2/3.